Can we make a motion? I want to make a motion. Let them talk before we take the vote.
Yeah.
Not after we.
I hope to grow within the Bayshore community and with the best of the best teacher and principal you can get. All I'm trying to say is don't take my school away.
And you know what? After 2 years, our kids are surviving there, okay? They are making it happen. Whether they're happy or not, they are at the tail end. And to just rip that away from them is not okay. It's not okay. You guys have to do better.
Just some things that I started getting uncomfortable with and some red flags that started being raised for me. And I can tell you that they've all been on display up here at this meeting. So my number one thing is the lack of transparency is growing. And it's obvious to me that it seems the Navesink constituency on your board had no idea what you guys were doing. So you are lacking in communication amongst your board, and to come here in a professional meeting like this, where you're gonna vote on a budget for a school district as large as Middletown, and these people didn't know about it, and it seemed to me that you scrambled when we all found out about that this was happening today, so we could all get an email at 4 o'clock and read that our kids were going here, 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 here. And then we're gonna come here and you're gonna present plan A and maybe plan B. And so there's a lack of communication with us. And if you're not communicating with each other, then nothing else is gonna work. That's number one in any relationship. Because I get that you all don't agree. You all are not supposed to agree. You all are not from the same political background. We shouldn't know that. You should all be here for the well-being of our students. And my one last thing is, I would really ask that you don't reimagine our town for us, because we have our own imagination, and that's not it.
How are you going to have my kindergartner and a science lab for middle schoolers? I work in a middle school. Are you hiring more nurses? Are you hiring more lawyers for the lawsuits when they fall off those chairs? Tonight is a proposal. We would have been absolutely respectful in and out if you were transparent with us. I did want to point out, when we looked at Tom's River and Jackson's headlines, Tom's River, when I was in high school, had a superintendent that stole from them.
Yes.
That's why they still don't have a budget that they can follow. Jackson is having the same issues that Lakewood had, where they have a lawyer that is robbing them blind and closing schools. Don't compare Middletown to Jackson and Tom's River, when those are not our issues. Those are valid issues, but they are not ours.
Or are they?
Have you as a board advocated to our state senator, Declan O'Scanlan, and the assembly members to get back that funding? Mr. Padula, I hear that you're pretty connected with him. And you press, as the president of VPR, why don't you get them on board to get us some money from the state? Why don't you get them on board to work for our community? Are you too busy worried about Phil Murphy? He's on his way out. We're not dealing with him anymore. This is where we are. This is what we need. We need our local senators and our local to help us.
This is my first one of these meetings, and I gotta say, I'm very unimpressed. Mark, Jeff, you guys were heartfelt, and thank you for your comments. Most of you were pretty silent. That's embarrassing. Bruce, I would strongly suggest you sit in on a Navesink's class and learn some empathy. The kids really help you out. But it seems very evident to me that you guys are not doing your job. And so I would like this community to really consider all the options that we have to us, whether there's recall committees to trigger certain petition numbers, to have a special election. This board needs to be shaken up. You guys are not doing your job. It's the obvious thing
Like all of you, I was blindsided by this plan. It was clearly discussed behind closed doors with no transparency and no community involvement. Everyone raise your hand if you think your student is going to be worse off. Every one of these hands represents a family and maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 kids. You owe all of them to come up with a better plan, and you owe us to have community involvement in that plan. We expect transparency on all the alternatives. We expect input in that. You guys are failing these communities. It's not just about kids. People moved here to create communities, create friends, right? You're changing communities and coming up with solutions that are worse off for our kids. That's all I have to say. Like I said, I didn't have the time to prepare like you all did behind closed doors.
I have a feeling that you did not want anybody to know this was gonna happen. So your letter about transparency is bullshit. There's no transparency. You are not listening. I just had a mom back there, her daughter's in special needs and goes to Thorne. They have gym class in the hallway. Because there's no room. So let's pack those schools with more kids. That's a smart idea. But let's cut staff. We don't have enough staff either. It is a joke. You know where you need to look for money? Administration. It is insane. You're planning. I was locked outside, which is another thing. You had all day. Yes. All day. You could have used these other rooms, used a gym, used a different facility to get all these people in this building. They deserve to be in here. But tonight, I want to talk about brass tacks, okay? You showed us a budget that was incomplete. This board has been involved in a number of very high-profile lawsuits over the course of the last 5 years. Number one, for authoring and enacting anti-trans legislation that did not comport with the state guidelines and law. So we had to go pay people like Bruce Padula a lot of money to defend us through a number of lawsuits. Another one was about bullying lawsuits. And we lost. And we lost them all, by the way. So I don't know what his hourly rate is, but maybe you need to up it a little bit. Look,
Get a new lawyer.
he's not an elected official. He's not an elected official. He was donating money to Katerina while he had the contract for this entire board. And then they unanimously voted to keep him in his seat, despite the fact that they looked at no other options. The reason? They just didn't have time to get another lawyer up to speed. So when we sit here and we say things like, I can't conceive of how we're in this giant hole of debt. I can't quite either, but I have some guesses. And what we'd like to request is an independent audit of this board. No reason that we should be in a position. Now, the second piece, talking about brass tacks, is that Jessica Alphone spent a lot of time talking about how many cuts there might be in a worst case scenario when we don't combine these schools. I have yet to hear her asking multiple times how many staff will be cut with your current proposal. Don't act like that is a pro of a plan B that we never got to see, but you don't tell us.
Approximately 40.
Approximately 40.
Wow. 40. So save our schools and spare 80 more jobs.
This would be the last person in the 30 minutes would be up.
You talk for 75 minutes and you're giving us 30? Are you kidding me?
That's not true. If you read,
That's not true. I can tell time.
30 people. It has not been 30.
it was 30 minutes for the discussion before the board voted. It was 30 minutes for discussion before the board voted.
Who do you think you are?
No one wants to talk to you.
There is a further public comment after the board votes.
I'd like to make a motion to extend public comment.
Who's gonna second it?
I'll second it.
My intention of discussing that with her was to give her the respect in that there was a rumor circulating, just so everybody is aware.
Not a rumor.
Tonight was about giving you the information. And use the next 6 weeks to,
You were
listen,
voting
if
on it.
anybody has, you're voting on a budget number.
Yes.
You're
you
not
know,
voting-
I
you're not- that budget
I saw
number
your
has to
email.
exist regardless. You're not voting on a plan to close schools.
No, you're voting on a budget.
There are going to be
So
community
corrupt.
sessions where you will have the listen, if someone has a better idea.
Yeah.
Someone just got up here and said, there are lots of smart people here that would be more than willing to help us.
3
figure
hours,
out
minimum time frame, a huge scale project. There is no enterprise in the world that would give a large scale project like this a 5-week timeline.
And the microphone is yours, so you
Try to
can-
back us into a corner.
We don't know our state aid.
May I finish?
Yes.
I believe that Leonardo gets at least a little shot.
What specific data is driving the consideration of school closures or mergers, and how recent is it? Can we see this data, not just slides, but actually the data that is making up these decisions? How will the board ensure equity so closures don't disappropriately affect certain student groups? What funding options, such as grant or state aid, are being pursued to avoid closures due to budget shortfalls? How are parents, teachers, and students being included in decision-making before any final plans are made? I saw a slide. That's one step. There should be more. What impact studies have been done on how closures or mergers might affect student performance, transportation, and family logistics? How will board measure success if closures or mergers happen? And will they plan if they don't deliver on these expected savings or benefits? Navasink, I can only speak to because that's where my daughters go to, has the highest elementary test scores in the district. How will the board ensure its proven model isn't disrupted by these closures and mergers? Rutgers University partnered with the DOE to improve K-12 learning outcomes. Navasink was asked to participate. While most schools experienced a decline in proficiency rates, Navasink experienced a 15% increase. Can the district use these strategies to improve schools instead of consolidating? How will the board weigh academic excellence against raw enrollment numbers and any closure decisions? How do you justify prioritizing size over quality of education? As a parent, I am worried about my kids' stability. Can we get a commitment from the board to involve not only Navasink, but all the schools represented families in an early planning process? This is very late in the planning process. In closing, I have the Rutgers study here. Navasink, was included, and it was a success, and it was studied for a reason. Why are we risk losing this?
Yeah.
There was no intent by any of you to want us to know what was going on tonight. I don't believe it for 1 second. This has been an ongoing, and I'm sorry, you knew there were going to be hundreds of parents here tonight. There should have been made arrangements to have this meeting where everyone could have been left. I've been behind this board for 6 years, and to tell you that how disappointed I am at what has been going on, it is extremely, extremely disappointing. We need to do better for our kids. The transparency, you didn't want us to know, guys. You didn't want us to know.
I didn't have time to digest this information. It was disseminated to us at 5 o'clock at night, and I truly believe that only happened because we were talking about it on Facebook. And you tried to come out ahead of it with those repeated emails. The emails clearly say, this is a decision that was hard to come by. Decision. You stated in your email, it's a decision. You should be ashamed. And it's a slap in the face to all of us, okay? First of all, the kids are more than money, okay? They're not just $13,000. I'm representing the Bayshore kids. If they're throwaways in this, the 6th and 7th graders, who cares what happens to them? Have you started middle
Yeah, right. Okay, so this budget is on the table. You're saying, hey, we have to vote it in or the state takes over. It's a threat. You gave us no time to get this information, no time to put this community and work it out. It's bullshit. It is. It's not acceptable. Like these kids are just numbers. Like this is a corporation. These are people. You're messing with their lives here. I don't know if you understand that. Okay, I'm gonna tag out and maybe someone else can come in because the other thing is you chose to hold this meeting in here and you knew what the response would be. The board has done this before when they couldn't move the meeting in there, but they chose not to because they wanted to keep it closed. You wanted to control the atmosphere.
Yeah. Because they're cowards.
It's not fair. So I'm gonna walk out, let someone else come in. But all of you, when you go to sleep tonight, think about, I've been crying because my daughter had a panic attack when I told her, what is it gonna be like when she goes to walk into that school? Right. Do any of you care? I don't think you do. I don't think you give zero thoughts about that. All these middle schoolers, they're just thrown away. The 6th and 7th graders, scared. They're just thrown away.
But more importantly, I am horrified by your lack of responsibility. To spring this on us with 1 month for the board to vote is completely disgusting. You have not taken any responsibility in your own misappropriation of the funds. And what funds. I hope in looking back at how this board has handled things in the past, in 2021, for some of you who may not know, members of this board, including President Capone, voted to not apply for funding from the state. I've heard a lot about state funds being an impact of this. I'm grateful and thankful in 2021, there were enough people up at that table to go against President Capone and that side and take that funding. Because I cannot imagine where we would be today had we been $4 million short of what we already are. The amount of money that has been spent on lawsuits, the lack of everything is just completely horrifying that you think the right answer is to shut down one of your highest performing schools, shut down another elementary school, shut down a middle school, and further crowd our district even more without giving any public knowledge or input into this. You talk about parent forums, Dr. Alphone. It would have been helpful to have started these when Deborah Wright brings up the strategic planning that many on this board put a hold on. Perhaps if we continued the discussions then, we would not be in this position.
And I just want to address that because our original strategic planning meeting was March 6th, and we moved it purposely so that we could share this information and then have conversations. That is 100%. Because it's important to have information to discuss. So that was a strategic way.
I do just have one other question, considering you're timing all of us. In addition to talking about state funding going down, I'd like to know why Middletown actually has a 6% increase in state funding this year. So I'm not quite sure where that disconnect is, because you cannot come here and tell all of us this is happening because state funding. It's not. It is happening because of the lack of responsibility from many of you on that table. And I want everyone in this room and everyone watching to remember, we voted them there. Not all, I voted Deb Wright. She's the only one on that table I voted for. We have the opportunity, if they do not make this right, we do not need to vote them again. We can find people to replace them and to fix the mess that they are putting our children in.
I will note that the letter that was sent out at 5 o'clock referred to a new adventure. I don't think people are enjoying the adventure.
No.
It referred to a sense of enthusiasm, pride, and anticipation. I'm not getting that feel here tonight. My first point, it's Middletown as a concept. It's a strange municipality. People don't move here for the quaint downtown. There is no downtown. They don't move here for the low taxes. The website in Middletown explains why people move here. It's a collection of villages, many of them historic, with neighborhoods that have grown in between. And that word that Ms. Minuin's used, community, that's why people move to Middletown, that's why they stay, that's why their kids come back, that's why their grandparents come back. What's being proposed, and there's time to fix it, would fundamentally destroy the very nature of Middletown. People don't move here so they can send their kindergartners and their first graders to an elementary school with 1,000 kids. There are plenty of other towns that have at least sensible school systems that you are competing with. I know we like the U.S. News reports on this board, the number 27 elementary school in the entire state. This is the one you're proposing to close?
Makes sense. Makes sense. They're dumb.
If any version of this plan that's been proposed passes, it will hang around your necks, not just for the rest of your very short political careers, for the rest of your time in Middletown, because of the fundamental effects that this will have. My last point, the community forums. Come armed with your data. Not with a PowerPoint presentation, with your data. Again, I can only speak to my community. Bring your data. We have some very smart people who can help you figure it out.
And so I ask you more specifically, and you, Dr. Alphone, did you do enough? Did you exhaust every option before proposing to close the schools or change the locks on hundreds of students' education? Did you fight for them the way that we deserve to be fought for and that we elected you for? The way that the people, because you made a decision like this, you're not just shutting down buildings, you're shutting down communities, you're forcing children to say goodbye to their teachers, their friends, and the safest place they've ever known. I'm asking you, not as officials, but as people, if this was your children's school, which I know it is for some, would you be satisfied with this proposal, really only one, right, that you've given us? Are you truly proud of the proposal, Dr. Alphone? We all know what this represents, and it's negligence, right? The decisions you've made over the years, it's negligent, this proposal, okay? If the answer is no to any of you, pause, rethink it, okay? Find another way, because all of our kids deserve leaders to fight for them, and you failed them, all of you, okay? We don't want you to give up on our kids. So board, I ask you to reject Dr. Alphone's negligent plans and yes to a plan that our community not wants, but needs, because this isn't it. So I ask you again, ask yourself tonight, and for every night when you go to bed, did you do enough, okay? And if you can't answer that with certainty, or with a sliver of doubt if it crosses your mind before you go to bed, then this fight, and it's gonna be a fight, is far from over. We collectively, as a community, are begging you, asking you to be more transparent, not just now, but always, because this impacts people the most here and in the community that you won't let in the doors. Please do better. It's what we voted for.
I totally get that piece of it. But end of March, early April is not the time to put this on kids. We know we have a mental health crisis. You know what my daughter said to me? One of my twins said to me, she said, I don't want to go to North because somebody died by suicide there recently. Mom, okay? So think about the mental health impact, because we are in a mental health crisis, not in Middletown, but in a society. Think about the mental health impact that it will have on our students, because I'm not saying that it never needs to happen, but the timeliness of this is really unprofessional, unethical, and inappropriate. Yes.
I'm also the chair of the Economics and Finance Department at St. Peter's University. And I think the character of this plan has been covered, because, man, if I was going to ram something through the faculty senate at St. Peter's, especially a 5 to 7 year plan, I would send it out at 4:30 right before the meeting. However, I can also speak to the fact that the plan reeks of corporate restructuring and exactly what an MBA student would come up with in their first semester. I teach at the graduate and undergraduate levels. And I would encourage we bring data because I would like to look at how you control for heteroscedasticity, autocorrelation, other things, your area of independent, dependent variables in the econometric model that I'm sure you ran because Superintendent Alphone said optimize, and that is a word with a very specific meaning, especially efficiency too. But I digress because in my professional stature, I want to bring up the fact that the plan is a Ponzi scheme. I understand there's a deficit. I also understand that this district receives a disproportionate amount of its funding from local funding sources. That's the revenue. If we overcrowd our schools, that's going to lower property values, which will lower your intake of tax revenue, which will then create a bigger deficit, which you will then counter by having to cut more, which will lower your property taxes, which will then create a bigger budget deficit, which will then create more cutting of costs, and you can see where that landed Greece and the Eurozone. However, I also happen to know quite a bit about financial crises. And the only thing that ever solves budget deficits and financial crises is what this gentleman alluded to, where you get the interested stakeholders in a room, you pause, like when the market is collapsing, and you figure out an amicable solution for all of the parties involved. You don't steamroll through a corporate restructuring, treating students as if they just, by the way, the whole presentation was talking about unit costs. They're talking about your children as if there's unit costs. And that is what needs to be done. I would like to close with this. Don't buy into fear. I beg you. When somebody comes up to you and says, there's no alternative, we need to do this or else somebody else is going to take over, this is the way it's going to be, guess what? There's an alternative, and they're trying to get you to go along with something because they're...
I don't know how many of you are from Middletown. I don't know how many of you live here or don't live here or who your kids are or where they go, and honestly, you guys don't really seem to care much about this, so I really don't care much about that. And I'm not a tit-for-tat human being. I am the shirt off your back kind of human being, and that is everybody that I can speak for that I know from Leonardo. We are a community. This community would not have already come together if you guys would have given us an opportunity to make our kids' money ourselves. Right. Something in that form to build more. I mean, our volunteer work is constant. We're always doing stuff. The PT, they live, eat, breathe, shit this stuff. and it's constant. Their whole lives revolve around helping each other and a community-based life. That's what we do here. You guys, we deserve that opportunity from you to have been given that shot. And I don't even think you control half the shit you're going through, to be truthful with you. It all comes down from somebody else. So, that being said, I don't know why this has to be done tonight, right now, like a fire drill, when you guys have known about this shit since 2020, 2019 even. Yeah. We should have been given an opportunity to either help, make a difference, do something. I mean, I don't know, but there has to be more that can be done, and you need to listen to us. This is our place, not yours.
There's no playgrounds, they gotta go across the street, the science of it. It's not a facility design, and I can't imagine what it would be like as a 5-year-old to walk into a building where you could easily get lost. Kids get lost in babysitters. You can see both ends. It's not a practical plan. Also, like just in my own situation with a 4th grader, a 6th grader, and an 8th grader, I now have 3 kids on 3 different tracks through the district, 3 totally different experiences. It breaks them apart from all their friends, sports colleagues, or compatriots. It just doesn't make any practical sense for a family to put their kids through a district and have it go this way. And further, on just a practical level, I don't believe that the lack of transparency was accidental. The idea that those 2 weren't allowed in the meeting, that you had access to this information for a long time, that the information came out at 5 o'clock, that we weren't even going to be allowed to speak before you took the vote, and that you have a sword of Damocles hanging over this conversation from the state, is clearly an administrative tactic to disenfranchise voters.
Yes.
And it's creating two very linear paths, north and south, and breaking this community apart. And if y'all are gonna live here, you're gonna see it for generations. It's a terrible mistake. And the idea that there are only one plan where it's lay off 120 teachers, and another plan where it's close 2 schools, dissolve another one, and lay off 40, is a stunning lack of creativity and imagination.
I'm probably the only person in this room that's gonna say thank you, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because I own a boxing studio, and you have made so many people mad. So if you guys wanna punch me, I hold pads, I have like bags, you guys can come to me because you're gonna need so much fucking therapy. The second point that I would like you to think of, that I'm not gonna repeat anything that everybody has already said, because so many good points have been made. What I want you to do is put yourself in the place of the very first person that you heard of today, which was that 7th grader. Because 5 years ago, I have 3 boys, one of them is her age, 2 boys at Bayshore, one of them named the same, okay? 5 years ago, she was in 2nd grade. She was ripped out of her school this exact same month, and she was taken away from her friends, she was taken away from socialization, she was taken away from her teachers, and she was put a mask on her face, and COVID happened. This is the exact same equivalent to those COVID kids, what you're doing right now. They are gonna go through the same mental health, social issues that you are on. You're choosing to do it. You're choosing to do the same thing that we couldn't avoid 5 years ago. Those poor COVID kids have been through so much. They have been through so much. Their learning issues have slowed, or their learning disabilities have increased. They have finally started to feel normal again. They are playing sports. They have friends. If you take these kids in middle school and you move them from their middle school, like my 6th grader, into a brand new middle school, do you know how hard that is gonna be for those kids? After they've just now finally started to feel normal again after COVID. So what I'm asking you as grandparents or moms or dads sitting up there, can you honestly go to sleep tonight and tomorrow and whenever you vote on this shit and tell me that you think this is an okay idea to put the COVID kids through, put them in new schools with all the new things they're gonna have to deal with, and then those little kindergartners and those 2nd graders and the 3rd grader that I also have, put in Bayshore. Because I know what Bayshore looks like, and to the person before me that spoke, it's not meant for little kids.
I moved here 11 years ago because this was supposed to be a really good district. And at first it was. And the last couple of years, it sucks. Sorry to say that. This reminds me of the Park Mom all over again. Same thing, we got emails that day, and then a meeting. You guys already made your decision, and you made us all come in here, we want to speak, and gave us hope.
Right.
But in reality, you guys don't care.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So, I definitely think this is bullshit, and you guys could always say that you guys care about our kids, you want the best for our kids. All you guys care about is your high-paying jobs and your paychecks. You guys don't care about your kids, or this would not be happening.
We've been in the news a lot. We're kind of a joke. This is a joke. I'm sorry. It kind of is. And you know what? We, as a community, not only get audited, but we also, as a community, we can also hire forensic accountants to audit you guys, honestly, because where is it? If you know where the money is going, then we can also, as a community, hire someone to figure it out, honestly.
Dr. George looked many of us in the eye prior to this vote and said,
nothing's set in stone. Nothing has been decided yet. We all knew. We all knew he was lying to our faces. We asked him about who was moving into those townhouses across from Target, and he said, families with children don't move into townhouses. They won't need schools. They're not gonna need to go to schools. Don't worry about that. Lied to our faces, okay? So a lot of us are coming here with that. Many of you were not on the board then. Many of you got voted in because of that. Many of you got voted in because you said North Side matters. And I want you to remember that when you're voting on this, okay? When he said North Side matters, you know what else he said? He said, when we consolidate Fort Monmouth into New Monmouth, we're gonna cap class sizes. We're gonna cap them 17 to 18 kids. You know what we're at? 24, 25. Wanna make sure you all know that. 24, 25 kids capped. Our kids are, and I look to you guys, because I remember when you, Tobacco, Capone were running, it wasn't just, oh, I'll mask our children, it was also Northside matters. Northside doesn't seem to matter today. It doesn't. Because everything that's going to be overcrowded and affected, you know where it's not affecting? It's not affecting Lincroft. It seems to be affecting Thorne. It seems to be affecting Port Monmouth. It seems to be affecting New Monmouth. And I remember a few years ago, in addition to Port Monmouth being on the table of, this is not the ADA compliant school, this is the school that's losing a roof, this is the school that's costing us money. You know what the other school was? It was River Plaza. Notice River Plaza's not on the budget today. River Plaza wasn't here. This was a whole surprise to all of us. And it was deja vu of Dr. George all over again, trying to have a very simple budget meeting, talking about, oh, what's it gonna be next year? And then all of a sudden he springs in, oh, and by the way, Port Monmouth's closing. And the teachers found out hours before and they all stormed in. They were like, what are you talking about? Had you told us about this, maybe we could have come up with a solution. But right now, the solution that you've given us is plan A, or we're gonna fire all your teachers, your schools are gonna be overcrowded, your classrooms are gonna be overcrowded, and screw you. That is the options that we've been given. Where's option B, C, and D? What other options are there? How is it that River Plaza was a non-compliant school 5 years ago? And this isn't to say River Plaza should be closing. I'm just saying River Plaza, it was either or 5 years ago. And now River Plaza is not in consideration. It's, well, listen, now it's saying, Navasink, how some of us say it. My understanding is Navasink is on some sort of property that we're not even gonna get money for. So we can't even get money for it. Where's the money for Port Monmouth? Where did that go? Let's talk about the turf fields that were put on North. Where did that money come from?
What about the scoreboard?
Oh, yeah, and the scoreboards. Oh, and the cheerleaders' uniforms. Let's not forget about that. But there was a number of monetary decisions made when this decision was in your laps. And you chose not to have this discussion. The kids on the north side, they just got screwed again.
Ma'am, can you?
I think it's important that.
Oh, are you gonna cut me off? I'm so sorry.
You've been more than 10 minutes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. What is your name? Bruce Padilla?
He's not on the board.
Are you the second contract? Are you the second attorney for the township? Or the second contract? I'm gonna be filing an Oprah request tomorrow, so I'm just curious who you work for. I'd like to know what your contract states and how much you're actually getting paid.
Go ahead, Bruce.
My contract is public record, I guess.
Yeah, no, and I'm going to, oh, and what, you had worked for a company and now you went out on your own?
Yes.
Understood. And I think we all understand this, which is part of the reason why we're so aggravated, because that was put in, I believe, a discussion on a Tuesday and voted in really quick by Friday to get you your contract. But you can shut off my mic now. I think I've made my point. I say thank you, and I want to let you know the people of Port Monmouth and New Monmouth have already had these promises made, new playground, small classrooms, everything else Guess what? We don't have a band room. We don't have a library. We are not allowed to have dances. We are not allowed to have
Band.
school
Band.
plays or band.
Band.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
They need to know what their future looks like in Thompson and Thorpe. My very real question tonight, though, is all the fifth graders who attend Navissing are planned to show up at Bayshore on Thursday night for their orientation to attend Bayshore Middle School as sixth graders. These children, for the past year that they've been in fifth grade, they've had their new Bayshore principal come in and introduce himself to every single one of them. They've had the band from Bayshore come in and play for them. They have already been acclimated to who the Bayshore students will be and are excited about it. We all attended the Middletown Alliance program. Our new Bayshore principal, who we will all have, attended that in celebration with all the kids who will be going to Bayshore. We sat there, the town sat there, saying you will all sit together in Bayshore in a few months. This is wonderful, this is beautiful, you're all together now. So I want to know who up here at this table is going to tell every fifth grader who's supposed to be sitting in the Bayshore auditorium on Thursday that they will not be going to that orientation on Thursday because there will be no Bayshore Middle School to go to. Because instead, their two little siblings will be going there. They will not be able to use the bathroom because they're too short. My child, who is deaf, will be wandering around a very large school with multiple doors, multiple stairways that were not built for a 5-year-old. Who is going to be there to help support him? He recently had surgery a week ago. Every Navissing teacher showed up for this child. And I'm sure they would do the same thing. But that sense of community and support is lost as soon as you start combining schools. Almost every child in Navissing Elementary School made a card for my child. Every teacher checked in on us the day before surgery, the day after surgery, and the following week. Our nurse has routinely checked in with me. Our principal, every person in that school has shown up for our family. They made sure my fifth grader and second grader who were crying and who were upset all day that their little brother was having surgery on his head to ensure he had access. They were there videoing with us so they could see their brother to make sure he was fine. That is not happening in a larger school, and not because our teachers don't want it to, and not because our support staff don't want it to. It is just impossible to do that at a large scale level. And that is what you're taking away from these children. You're putting these tiny children, we had to drive past Bayshore to get here. Have you gone on those stairs? Do you know what is gonna happen to a 5- and 6-year-old? I agree with whoever said it before. I hope that you increase the lawyers at this table because there are going to be so many injuries within that school. It is not set up for 5- and 6-year-olds. It is set up for my incoming 6th grader, and it is a beautiful facility for a middle schooler, which is as it should remain. I am very content and happy at our beautiful, small, little school. Yes, we don't have our individual music room, but the love and community far overshadows.
This board heartlessly closed the school and the kids went back one day, because the pandemic closed the schools 2 days after the board voted. So they never got to go back and say goodbye. Nobody cared. It was absolutely awful. And I just want to know, what is your plan to actually close these schools? Are they going to have buses, or are these families going to have to fight like we did to get our kids bused to school? It's absolutely insane. We live exactly 1.28 miles from New Monmouth. We had to fight tooth and nail to get our kids bused to school over extremely dangerous roads. And driving our kids to school in the morning is a nightmare. Drop off is a nightmare. Extracurricular things, after school, nightmare. Anytime the parents have to park in that parking lot, they do not fit. Dropping my
my kid off at Thorne is already a nightmare. Drop off at Thompson is a nightmare. So what are the actual logistical plans for how are you gonna merge all these kids?
There is no.
Like, do you actually have anything going forward past this vote and past what we're doing here like this year? What does it look like going forward? That's all I want to know. Thank you.
I think we've heard from the community now, so it's funny, I was running some numbers, looking at the capacity of schools. So right now, if you were to transition Bayshore students to Thompson and Thorne, you would be at max capacity plus 129 students.
Oof.
How? No, not true, I know
you
you're
said the data is
transparency.
online, she's using that.
This guy over here. Can we put you over here?
Yes.
Yes. You've been here probably since 7:30 and you have a lot of shit figured out. And this is nothing figured out. Yeah. Can we skip to phase 3? Phase 3. What's phase 3? We're gonna go down to 8 elementary schools, so we're gonna close more. Did anybody know that?
Yes.
Sounds fun. But you have the brutal mayor up there at Middletown who's shoving all of this housing everywhere. Yep. Where do those kids go? Yeah. They don't have kids. They don't have kids. Oh, that's I forgot. We're gonna have, are we gonna put out like a resume? Oh, you can't come here, you have kids.
It's not 55 and older. They're not 55 and older.
I think you guys need to rethink your plan, your budgeting.
No, so
Yeah.
please look interested when people are talking. Like you, Mr. Lawyer. He doesn't look interested at all. He's not.
In 2023, the average, we are over 175% with their salaries. That is insane. You can look this up too, online. Top heavy.
But I'm a believer in tactical next steps and holding people accountable, so I want to talk about what you're going to do when you leave this room. The schedule that you put up on your slide for the community information sessions is untenable. The first one is 2 weeks from tonight, and it sounds like we're up against a tight deadline, and we've got a plan that is not going to move forward, so you guys have got to rework your schedule and figure out how you're going to make it work. And I want to know who on the board is responsible for revising that schedule and getting it out to all of us by tomorrow, because you were very able to get out a series of emails today, so I know you can do it. Who on the board will be revising the schedule for the community session and with the proper communication?
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand.
Who's gonna do it? Who
Oh,
did
guys.
it today?
Guys, the emperor has no clothes. I also want to know, there were questions about the data that went into this. There's a lot of smart people who live in our communities who would be happy to help you analyze it. We don't just want to look at what you put on a slide and try to force feed us. We want the actual data. When will that be sent out? It seems like it's readily available, that you were able to put together your own opinion and point of view. So where is that data? Is it already accessible? If not, when will it be accessible? Where are the links, and when will the information be coming and the communication be coming to the entire community so that we can self-review? Because I don't think any of us have a lot of trust in what you're telling us. Who's responsible for that on this board?
Speak up.
Who is responsible?
Do you do anything?
So, none of you.
No one can do an action step? Anybody do any work up there? Anybody? Nobody.
I believe the word negligence was used earlier, and this is negligent. Not one person can tell me who can look at revising a schedule.
The board is not responsible for that. It's not the board.
Finance committee, raise your hand.
So who is it? So tell us who it is. Share with us so that we can find the appropriate person. Right now, what I'm hearing is that you'll figure us all out. Yes, the presentations at the community sessions. We're going to lose 2 weeks before the first community session. We're up against an end of April deadline.
Trying to give people time to be able to.
No, I think we're ready to talk about it. So Dr. Alphone, this was your proposal, so you've obviously been the closest to the data. You've mentioned a plan B. We haven't seen any detail on that.
Shannon, can you close that?
When will that be shared? When will that be disseminated? And I'd like to see what was explored and thrown out as options C and D. Because you know what? Option A is not working for the people in this room, and we deserve to see everything. And the fact that no one will sit here and commit to working on a revised schedule is ridiculous.
You can't commit to more community meetings.
You should be ashamed of yourselves and you should be embarrassed.
It's not negligence, it's incompetence. Or corruption, but we'll find out in the audio.
And the fact that you won't answer these simple steps about revising a schedule or sharing data that you're supposed to be basing this earth-shattering plan on.
This is what corruption looks like.
This is what corruption looks like.
If you've got nothing to hide, show us the data, give us the schedule to have the proper conversations with us. You say that you weren't trying to hide the plan from us by sending these emails last minute, but now you're refusing to address even meeting with us again because you don't want us to have time to revise this plan. You want the budget to pass tonight because there's a threat that the state will come in. Otherwise, you want that to pass, and then you want to push us to the side until the deadline runs out. Well, I'm here to tell you that we notice, and it's being held accountable. And if there's any press in the room, which I hope there is, I hope that you will note that no one on this board would commit to reworking schedules or relooking at options or giving the public a place where they could go to find the data that this is supposedly fixed on.
All of the state aid data and all of the numerical figures that I reviewed in the state aid over the course of time and enrollment figures, it's all public information on the New Jersey Department of Education's website. That's where I pulled that information.
Okay, and who will disseminate that information? There should be.
Anybody has public access to that at any point in time.
Why can't you just send it?
They don't want to make it easy for you to access the information. But you know, we have a lot of people in this room, a lot of smart people, people who I'm sure are familiar with some of this data, and it will be on us, everyone in this room, to be sharing on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, all of the updates that they will not give us. Do not let them do this. Hold them accountable. Take the steps that they won't, because they're not going to work on our behalf. We've seen that tonight.